right, hello everyone, my name's Alice O'Neill.
And my name is Hallie Carroll, and the title of our policy proposal is Anti-Capitalist Justice, Divesting from the Prison Industrial Complex. So when Alice and I started talking about ideas for our proposal, we realized we both favor more abolition of prison and policing and creating a new system. However, for the purposes of this competition, we realized we needed to start somewhere, so we began talking about ideas at the intersection of criminal and racial justice. We talked about plea bargains, solitary confinement, lockup quotas, all the ideas you can see above. However, we began to realize that all of these ideas were symptoms of a larger problem, the problem of capitalism. Capitalism is at the root of so many of the institutional and structural problems of racism in our country, from enslavement then to mass incarceration now. So that's why our proposal is divesting from the a fundamental part of being anti-racist is being anti-capitalist, which is why we propose divesting from the prison industrial complex, which means eliminating any opportunity for some person or corporation to gain financially from the incarceration of another human being. Before we get into the policy proposal itself, we're just going to go through a few statistics that were part of informing our work, and these statistics come from the Innocent Project, the Equal Justice Initiative, the Marshall Project, the Brennan Center, and other similar institutions focused on justice.
So firstly, the US, though it only possesses about 5% of the total world population, possesses 25% of the world's prison population. And 8.5% of the US prison population is held in private prisons. And from 2000 to 2016, the private prison population in the US grew at a rate 5 times faster than the total US prison population.
$87 billion was the 2015 total spending on U.S. Jails and prisons. However, when you include policing, court fees, the amounts families were spending about visits and paying for different needs of their incarcerated loved ones, the price that fell on state, federal governments, as well as American families was $182 billion.
And as I'm sure many of you already know, the 13th Amendment provides one of the most significant loopholes that allows for incarcerated labor that has essentially become modern-day slavery in the United States.
And thinking on the subject of the 13th Amendment, here are a few statistics from the incredible documentary on that subject, 13th. So we have the lifetime likelihood of imprisonment of white men is 1 in 17, while for black men it is 1 in 3. And while black men make up 6.5% of the US population, they make up 40.2% of the prison population.
$2 billion. This is the estimated cost or estimated value of prison-made goods in 2015. 80%, this is the maximum percentage that may be deducted from an incarcerated person's wages under the Prison Industry Enhancement Certification Program. And this graphic explains that over 70% of people held in local and county jails have not been convicted of a crime, and many of these people are held in jails because they cannot afford to pay for cash bail. This statistic refers to the fact that black men and Latino men face 35% and 19% higher cash bail amounts than white men charged with similar crimes on average.
And finally, 97%, this is the number of cases the amount of cases in the last 50 years that have been handled through plea bargains, meaning 97% of cases do not go to trial. And overall, these statistics convey the incredibly disproportionate arrest and incarceration of black men, black and brown people in general, as well as the undeniable ties between our prison system and for-profit corporations. So now we're going to get to our proposal itself.
Yes. So the first part of our proposal is to abolish private prisons. Although, as I mentioned before, only about 8.5% of the US prison population is held in private prisons, we still believe they are problematic because they incentivize incarceration for the benefit of corporations. Private companies should not benefit from mass incarceration because then they will have a vested interest in continuing mass incarceration and can lobby to do so. So we believe that this aspect of the prison system should be abolished through termination of current contracts and policies that prohibit the formation of new contracts of this kind.
The second part of our proposal, it's a little bit cut off, but it's reforming incarcerated labor. So while about 96% of positions held by incarcerated workers are institutional maintenance jobs like cleaning or cooking, 4% of those are still privatized correctional industries such as making clothes, license plate, fighting California wildfires, etc. And all of these workers are being exploited for low-wage work, and as Alice mentioned earlier, up to 80% of their wages can be deducted, and most of what's left, unfortunately, has to be spent on food, water, and hygiene products. So we propose ending any ties between corporations and privatized prison labor so that no workers can be exploited for low wages. And also, we believe that working while incarcerated should be a choice for gaining skills or making money, not a necessity to surviving while in the prison system.
Third would be to abolish cash bail. As we mentioned before, cash bail has led to a large number of people being held in jails without being convicted of a crime, and this disproportionately impacts Black and Latino men. We believe that our proposal to end cash bail will also contribute to ending mass incarceration because it will effectively reduce the number of pretrial detainees in local jails and also reduce the number of detainees who take plea bargains regardless of their innocence or guilt. Several cities and states throughout the US have already implemented programs such as this, such as New York City, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Illinois, and they have been effective in reducing the number of pretrial detainees in jails, without negatively impacting court appearance rates.
And the final part of our proposal is abolishing lockup quotas, which essentially give a financial incentive to have high percentages of prison beds filled. And we believe that lockup quotas inform sentencing in courts, which informs policing practices in the community. So there should be no financial incentive for the incarceration of any human life.
And just to end, we'd like to go over the implications of our policy. We'd like to reiterate the point that this proposal is intended to be a first step towards abolition. We believe that eliminating incentives to fill prisons will lead to fewer arrests and also allow us to move towards more community-based policing. We also believe that removing these incentives will allow us to have a more open discussion about mass incarceration in the US and the systemic racism that is tied to this system. The consequences of the prison industrial complex color every part of our criminal justice system. So we must begin addressing this complex if we are ever to end mass incarceration in the United States. Thank you.
Do you have slides? Perfect, awesome, thank you. Let's see.
There are 2 files on the PowerPoint too.
Okay. Go ahead and just get that up for you.
What's that? Okay. Sorry? Okay. Easy enough, thank you. All right. Hello, my name is Connor Flutton, and I'm presenting today on ending the war on drugs, decriminalization, and racial justice. It's no secret that the war on drugs has been, to put it generously, a policy failure. Since its inception in the 1970s, it has failed to lower rates of drug use and drug deaths. And it has actively destroyed hundreds of thousands of American lives, particularly those of people of color, who are unfairly and disproportionately targeted and incarcerated under existing drug laws. It is time for the United States to commit itself to a new policy direction, one that will save lives, reduce incarceration rates, and address addiction at its root. It is time to decriminalize possession of all drugs and expunge the convictions of all persons convicted of drug possession offenses. Before we get to how this policy will be effective and why it is necessary, we should first address what exactly it would entail. It is important to note that decriminalization is not legalization. You will not be able to pick up LSD on your next trip to Hannaford's. Rather, drug possession will be treated as an administrative offense, similar in severity to a traffic ticket. If a person is caught with a small amount of drugs, less than a 10-day supply, they will be required to attend a meeting with a dissuasion committee, a group of social workers and addiction specialists who will meet with the affected individual, understand why they are using drugs, attempt to dissuade them from further drug use, and connect them with the resources needed to battle their addiction and any other mental health issues they may be facing. The sale or production of drugs will still be entirely illegal and treated as a criminal offense. Due to the structure of drug laws in the United States, this will require decriminalization at both the federal and state level nationwide. However, this has already begun to take place. In just January of this year, the state of Oregon decriminalized possession of small amounts of drugs throughout the state. Funding for these dissuasion committees and addiction recovery centers could come from a number of sources. The most obvious source is to redirect funds currently spent on unhelpful and destructive policing and instead spend it on social work and addiction recovery centers. Additionally, policymakers could follow the example of Oregon and use funds from tax revenue for the sale of legal marijuana to fund addiction recovery. As a corollary to this policy, any convictions for drug possession that would become decriminalized under this policy would be expunged entirely. This would free people from prison, free people from parole, and give them a new chance at a just life. The model for this policy is Portugal. In 2001, facing a significant drug crisis, Portugal decided, instead of doubling down on harsh drug sentences, to decriminalize possession of less than a 10-day supply of any drug. In the 2 decades since this policy was implemented, Portugal has had clear success, especially relative to the United States. Portugal has the lowest rate of drug deaths of any nation in Western Europe, and its rate is less than 2% that of the United States. The number of 15 to 24-year-olds who admit to using hard drugs in the past month dropped by half since 2001. The incarceration rate for drug offenses in Portugal is 1/3 what it was in 2001. The Portuguese health ministry spends less than $10 per citizen per year on its drug policy, compared to the $1 trillion and growing price tag of the war on drugs in the United States. Turning to the United States, as I mentioned, the war on drugs has been a failure. It has not reduced drug use or drug deaths, and it has had little impact on public safety. In fact, even setting aside the harmful impacts of incarceration, the war on drugs has been actively harmful. Even after a person is released from prison, in the 2 weeks after their release, they are 13 times more likely to overdose on drugs. People are dissuaded from seeking help for their addiction, whether they need long-term care or immediate medical attention as a result of drug use, if they are afraid of arrest and conviction. This especially impacts people of color who are disproportionately affected by these same drug laws. These harsh and punitive drug laws in the United States exacerbate issues of mass incarceration and racial disparities within the United States. 20% of all people incarcerated in the United States are incarcerated for drug offenses. Because communities of color are subjected to disproportionate policing, discriminatory practices within the criminal justice system, and mandatory minimum sentences, 80% of the prisoners in federal prison and 60% of the prisoners in state prison, of those who are incarcerated for drug offenses, are Black or Latino. Decriminalizing drug possession would be an immediate and concrete step that is entirely within the power of the government to end one of the primary mechanisms by which people of color are harmed by the criminal justice system. A person cannot be arrested, convicted, or subjected to a mandatory minimum sentence for something that is no longer a criminal offense. To conclude, the example of Portugal shows us that decriminalization can work. The example of Oregon shows us that it can be implemented in the United States. Yes, this is a radical policy change, but when the status quo is such an abject failure, anything less than radical change is unacceptable. It is pointless to waste time, energy, and political will on tinkering around the edges of a system that is so completely unjust and failed. One person unjustly imprisoned is too many. One person too afraid to seek help for their mental health is too many. And anything less than decriminalization is not enough. Thank you.
How's it going? Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, no problem. You have to show me which one it is. Got this.
I know which one it is.
So, just open up this drive.
If you scroll down.
Yep.
Yeah, there it is.
This one?
It's the PowerPoint.
Start slideshow. You should be all set. Just click to change the slide, okay?
Click to change the slide. All right, thank you. Oh. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Brous. These are my friends Jake Nash and Tom Cummins. We're here to talk to you today about marijuana legalization's role in advancing racial justice. We're really quickly approaching the 50th anniversary of the war on drugs, started in 1971 when Nixon launched his full-out offensive on public enemy number one in the United States, which is drugs. When we investigate the moral intentions of our leaders, it can be incredibly difficult to look back and try to understand what they were thinking and assess, what their intentions really were, especially looking back 50 years and trying to decide, what was going on. Thankfully, in the case of the Nixon administration, we have more than theories, we have a quote. We gotta click it. We wanted to open with this quote because we just wanted to push aside any doubts that anyone might have that the war on drugs at its initiation in 1971 was anything other than a racist and political campaign against the enemies of the Nixon administration. John Ehrlichman, President Nixon's domestic policy chief, was one of the top administrators of the war on drugs in America, and he said this for everybody to see, and these are the facts. It's really tragic, and we wanted to open on it just so we all understand, the information that we're working with. We were lying, and we knew it. The first portion of our recommendation is the full nationwide legalization of marijuana. The most immediate step to prevent further damage would be the nationwide legalization of marijuana. The best existing policy framework we've been able to find that we are enthusiastically endorsing is Senator Cory Booker's proposed Marijuana Justice Act. This act leverages federal funding for prisons and law enforcement against states that refuse to legalize marijuana. Currently, there exist unfortunate political realities that a minority of states now, thankfully, are yet to legalize, but we're facing a strange trend where the wave is coming of states continuing to legalize. We had New York earlier this year. It was a major development, but there remain states that are going to be unwilling. Cory Booker kind of faces these realities with political leverage and holding funding for prisons and police, which is an incredibly valuable source of income for a lot of these states. It also removes cannabis from the Controlled Substance Act. Many of you would know cannabis is a Schedule I drug, along with heroin and cocaine. Those are those drugs with absolutely no medical value and high risk of addiction, two things that no longer fit the bill of marijuana, now that we've been able to think a little more clearly 50 years down the line.
While the legalization of marijuana is a good first step towards eliminating future harm, it's not the only necessary one. Because a lot of people have been arrested. 7 million arrests were because of possession of marijuana from 2001 to 2010, and the vast majority of them were for possession of small amounts. If you're a Black American, the usage rates are about the same for Black and white Americans, but Black Americans are 3.7 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession. And there are still 40,000 people still in prison due to marijuana convictions as of 2020. And when these people get out, they'll face issues accessing housing, returning to school, and finding jobs. So it's not enough to just legalize. We have to expunge the record of these convictions. The first piece of doing that is then Senator, now Vice President Kamala Harris's MORE Act, which addresses the bureaucratic hurdles of expunging juvenile convictions for marijuana possession. This is a great first start, but it only covers juveniles, so it really needs to be expanded to cover everybody and address all those people who are in prison and have been arrested for marijuana possession. In addition to that, that's just federal convictions. In addition to that, we support a federally funded mandate to expunge state-level convictions, which is something that appeared in Senate Majority Leaders Schumer's Marijuana Freedom and Opportunity Act, which would provide resources and incentives for states to help them pay for eliminating these convictions in states that want to, and to help encourage states that don't want to as well.
So, in addition to full legalization nationwide, along with the expungement of the criminal records related to that, another important step toward advancing racial justice will be lowering barriers to market entry for people of color. One proposal for doing just this comes from former Texas Representative Beto O'Rourke's plan to waive application and licensing fees for POCs, which these fees can often rise, or are often in the thousands and even into the tens of thousands annually. So this is a major hurdle for entering the market, or a very lucrative market. In addition to lowering barriers to entry for people of color, another option will be the distribution of reparations using cannabis tax revenue. This map here just shows us how significant these revenues are currently. This is from 2020, and you can see these numbers in total are over $1 billion. And this has actually already been done. Just last month in Evanston, Illinois, the city approved a plan to commit its first $10 million of cannabis tax revenue to reparations. And these will come in the form of $25,000 housing grants to Black families affected by redlining policies in Evanston. And full legalization, according to a 2016 study by the Tax Foundation, found that annually revenues could total upwards of $28 billion, which would be an ample pot of money for reparations, a constructive reparations program in the United States. While it will never be possible to rectify the ills of Jim Crow, slavery, and the war on drugs, allocating the vast majority of future cannabis tax revenue to communities of color across the country would be a great step in the right direction. Thank you.
Yeah. Here.
Sorry, some technical difficulties about my PowerPoint. Sounds good.
Screen share. Is this the one?
Hi everyone, my name is Erica Lee, and today I would like to talk about the policy proposal, Dismantling Predictive Policing Tools to End the Racial Profiling. So this is surge in demand for reforming the criminal justice system to create a racial equitable environment. However, the predictive policing tools are existing in the policing, arrest, bail, and confinement. And this has actually become a process to create an equal, racial, equitable environment. So you may wonder what is the racial equitable policing. So predictive policing tools is taking the data that can from this different sources, analyzing the pattern that can give the result to anticipate, prevent, and respond effectively to the future crimes. And there are two types of predictive policing tools that currently the United States federal government and agency are using. First of all, is the location-based, and the other one is the people-oriented. So both of the predictive policing types of tools, using algorithms to draw the connection between the places' historical crime rate in specific zones in order to form to calculate the crime rate and see how likely will the crime happen. However, it also creates a biased environment to some disadvantaged communities and to those areas that more peoples of color living. So we can have a look of the people-oriented tools recently in Oklahoma, Arizona, Colorado, Kentucky, Washington, and Wisconsin. They all use these assessments to give the judges to take to decide whether the defendants should do bailing or sentencing to the prison. So having a look of this data, we can see that there's a racial inequitable environment that black defendants are more likely to have a higher risk than the white defendants, and white defendants are having the lower risk score. And this risk score can determine whether those defendants will likely go to the prison or they will go to probation instead. So this is really important for us to recognize these differences between peoples of colors and white people. And having a look of this data, we can see that African American of people are much more likely to label as higher risk than white people based on these predictive policing tools. And in 2020, Santa Cruz, California is the first city in the US to abolish predictive policing tools. And Boston also bans the usage of facial surveillance technology for local authorities to obtain the data. These two examples provide us the visibility of how dismantling the predictive policing tools can create a much more equitable environment in our criminal justice system. And my approach of dismantlement is using a federal perspective. First of all, it's the dismantlement of abolishing the predictive policing tools. The United States of Law Enforcement and the Judicial Court should abolish the nationwide usage of predictive policing tools. These tools are not only costly, but also create a bias data to peoples of color. And this data is based on the historical data that also specifically is to disadvantaged communities. Especially, it's costly. It costs $15,000 every 50,000 people in St. Louis County, for example. So we should actually abolish these policing tools that cause bias and lots of money to do that. Next, we need to have a national community control over police surveillance audience. So the United States should have a federal act of funding and acquisition of the surveillance equipment by local police department. So the local community can have much more right to fully involve in the decision making on the implication of surveillance technologies. And this involvement can not only protect civilians' privacy, but also ensure the racial equity exists in the disadvantaged communities. Next, adaptation. So we should create an independent police complaints council. So this council can not only promote police accountability, but also can create a much more racial equitable environment. Using the example in the UK and Hong Kong, like they both have like this council that can promote racial equity in the environment, that like people can overseeing the policing system for handling the complaints, and also like can alleviate the racial inequality environment in the community. Next, form the community policing force. So community policing is essential that can like establish the relationship between the civilians and also the like policing people. So by having the community policing force, it can like act as a mechanism to supervising and peering control for the police officer performance to manage the risk of like racial profile in the process of policing. Third, education. So we should implement a mandatory district advancing like racial equity. Using these two can provide quantitative and qualitative like indicators for like authorities to deepen their understanding and create their cultural like responsive practice to have a standard operating procedures on decision making. Next is launch an equity and social justice initiative. A national initiative of assisting people living in disadvantaged people are needed right now. So this initiative can provide opportunities and facilitate the interaction between different community members to build a mutual respect environment. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Great job. That was fascinating. I wasn't sure how it was going to work remote, but it was great. Great to see you. Great to see your presentations. So now we're going to take a break. I can't say exactly how long it will be. I can say that the judges will privately deliberate and then come back, and Professor Kesler will announce the winner, and then I will announce the theme for next year. So enjoy the food and drink that I know is there. I think Jen, Andrew, or somebody from the executive board may come up at some point and talk about the elections. I'll be off with the judges, so I may not see that. I'll text Sherry when we're coming back, just so she can give everyone a heads up to be seated and be ready. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for coming. Ooh. Thanks for coming. We're just going to plug our Goldfarb elections coming up shortly. We're going to post a Google form. We'll send it to the mailing list. If you're not on the mailing list, come find Jen or I. We'll add you to the mailing list so you don't miss out on fun events like this. And yeah, you should all receive a Google form asking you to apply for the exec board. Of course, we welcome all class years. It's a lot of fun. We get to plan events like this. Every speaking event that the Goldfarb organizes goes through us. We have discussions regarding the annual theme, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of fun. We do get food a lot, which is always nice. And this Friday, it's our Policy and Pizza event. We have Billy Parker coming, who will be talking about the school's COVID policy, which should be interesting. There will be pizza. It will be in person. It's from 12 to 1 in Lovejoy 215. So we hope to see you there. You can sign up with the link in our bio on our Instagram, or I think there is a post that went out on Colby now as well.
Yeah, so a little bit more about our elections. Basically, we are looking for 2 representatives of each class year to serve as our engagement committee, and Andrew and I are this year serving as your co-chairs, and that's also a position you're eligible to apply for. And basically the form we'll send out will just ask for your name and a brief little description of why you want to run for the position you want to run, and you can say you're very excited about politics and policy in general, or whatever you feel like putting on. A little bit more about the timeline. So we're accepting invitations, or not invitations, self-nominations today up until Friday the 30th. And then on Monday, which will be the third, we'll be sending out voting opportunities for the mailing list. So if you're not on our mailing list, you'll be able to, if you want afterwards, just come talk to Andrew and I, and we'll add you. We'd be more than happy to have you. And then voting will close on the 7th, and we'll announce that shortly after. In addition to what we do on the exec board, other than food, we put on very fun events. For example, last year we did a lot of fun events regarding the elections that happened. We put watch parties on, gave out free blankets, free merch, and really tried to provide an opportunity for Colby's campus to engage in policy in whatever shape or form that looks like. So if you want more information, please feel free to contact Andrew and I, or just come see us afterwards. We'll probably be in the back somewhere. But we're so excited to have y'all, and I won't make y'all wait any longer to see who wins.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Andrew and Jen. I don't know if anyone can hear me, but we appreciate you doing that.
We can.
I don't know if I'm on camera, but
There
it
we
looks
go.
like I am now. So next up will be Professor Christel Kesler, who's the Goldfarb Associate Faculty Director, and as well as Associate Director of, I'm really bad at titles sometimes. She's also Professor of Sociology. Christel, come on up.
Hi, everybody. Sorry to keep you waiting. Probably needless to say, it was a very hard decision for the judges, and so we deliberated a little longer than we even expected to. I want to remind everyone of just what the prizes are. As you know, all of the finalists who presented today get $300 per proposal, so in some cases split among the teams. And now, in addition, we'll be announcing the first, second, and third place winners. The third place proposal gets an additional $700, the second place winner an additional $1,200, and the first place winner an additional $1,700. So without further ado, and I'll just sort of read the names and the presentation titles again, and we will congratulate the winners. We'll start, I feel like it's a game show. I'm going to start with the third place winner and go on up, okay? In third place, we would like to announce Connor Flatten and congratulate him for his presentation, Ending the War on Drugs, Decriminalization, and Racial Justice. I feel like I should have something to hand off, but I'll just say congratulations to Connor. In second place, we would like to congratulate Alice O'Neill and Hallie Carroll for their presentation, Anti-Capitalist Justice, Divesting from the Prison Industrial Complex. Congratulations. And in first place, we would like to congratulate Esther Kim for her proposal, Policing in the U.S., Ensuring Equitable Involvement and Citizen Participation. Thank you again all so much. We absolutely loved reading all of these proposals and hearing your presentations today. Very pleased by the quality of all of them. It was a really hard decision. We congratulate our winners. Thank you. Yeah, great idea.
Did I hear Sherry say that you guys are going to do a group picture or a picture
Yes,
of the winners?
yeah. Should I do a handshake or is that anti-COVID? Cool, okay. Where's our camera? I'll wait for him.
How about if we line you up third, second, and first place, and then Crystal can go on the side and shake your all your hands.
How should I? Okay, great. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yay. Cool. I think Kimberly's back to Kimberly. She has another announcement. Yes, she has another announcement.
This will be quick because I know you guys are ready to go. Well, first of all, congratulations. It was not easy at all for our faculty judges to decide, but we're really happy for you all, for all of the presentations, but in particular for those that stood out the most. So the big announcement is our annual theme for next year. I gave two options for the Goldfarb Executive Board, the Student Executive Board, to vote on last night. I had lots of great conversations with everyone from the provost to our faculty committee to students across the board of what topics we thought would be best. But the two that really rose to the top were two ideas that I've heard from a lot of people, but were also ideas from the student board. And the vote was 6-4, so it was really tight. I didn't have a plan for a tie, so thankfully that didn't happen. But the annual theme is, can you guys do a drum roll? I don't know if you can hear me doing a drum roll, but the winner is freedom of speech. So next year we'll be looking at issues around freedom of speech. So that's including looking at cancel culture, looking at the role of social media, thinking about censorship on campus, thinking about where the political divides have divided us as well in terms of freedom of speech. So we're excited to do that. We'll build a whole program around that next year, and the policy symposium next year will be looking at that issue. Thank you all for coming, and have a great night.